You have to be multimodal. Technology is changing fast. New things are coming faster than we think. Sometimes if you're too late in delivering projects, you're already out of date. By 2030, any business that is not a technology business will not be in business.
We've been on this journey with them for a number of years, and they're now in a position to finally, at the moment, we're looking at decommissioning old legacy systems, being able to work at speed via the use of MuleSoft, and being able to make these services so accessible is the only way that they can differentiate in the market. And that was really kind of the key drivers behind this program of work.
Welcome back. The great news is the next part of our conversation is going to be way cooler. It's going to be real lived implementation and delivery by our partners Infomentum. We're going to be sharing some customer stories, some war stories, the successes, how it's really like to roll out a Mule implementation, and actually hopefully we will hear why we work so much with Infomentum. And the founder and CEO, Vikram Setia, is here today. To my right, he had a vision, he's a man with a plan, and actually 100% of his business is Salesforce and MuleSoft. So we work with them extensively. Before I hand over, I want to also introduce a phenomenal woman to my left, Alicia Radu, who's my peer. She's the sales director there. And they're going to be talking about customer implementations and delivery and metrics for success. So over to you.
So we've heard how API-led architecture can help you bring real-time data and help your business become more efficient. But how do you actually realize that? Where do you start? Because it could be a big mission. It might appear like to be a big mission. And we all know being an IT department, particularly in a government organization, is not easy. You have to be multimodal. What I mean by that is you need to operate at different speeds. So you have to keep your lights on, which is business as usual, which in itself is a full-time job. You then have to work at different speeds in case there is a cyber attack or cyber threat, or there is an urgent security patch to be applied. Then there is a pressure of delivering projects for lines of business, which could be a new HR system, new finance system, or it could be something else. And that project then needs to be captured. And there are multiple such projects. So who do you prioritize? And then technology is changing fast. New things are coming faster than we think. You know, the window, the life cycle of new things coming is so short that sometimes if you are too late in delivering projects, you're already out of date, right? So innovate. How do you innovate? On top of that, technology is becoming easier in terms of cloud, SaaS, PaaS, and all of that. So businesses are getting more enabled to start their own applications. But they can't do it without IT. They still need data, they still need processes, they need integrations. So there's a lot of pressure and not enough time. There is a phrase which has been going around, started by someone in Stanford University. It said by 2030, any business that is not a technology business will not be in business. It's a big statement. But technology is not your business. Your business is serving citizens, consumers, providing services. So what we thought we'll do is that we'll just tell you 3 or 4 stories to see how organizations like yourselves, what have they done, and how does this all come to shape and come to life. So we start with the police force. This is Humberside. When we started speaking to them, they said, what we really want to do is we want to appear to the public as friendly people, not as, oh my God, this is police. And we want to be supportive, and we want them to relate, and we want the citizens to feel that we're looking after them. And this was what was classified by them as a victim support journey. So if someone reports a crime, whether it's a neighborhood watch or they are a victim themselves, a police officer or a department might be allocated, there might be investigations, there might be court cases, there might be witnesses, a lot of things happen. But as a victim, you don't know anything what's going on. And that creates a lot of vacuum. And that is not very pleasant situation to be in. But this information sits in multiple systems, in command center, control center, police officer's notebook, a lot of things. So what Humberside Police has done is build a solution using MuleSoft and Salesforce, which brings real-time information based on the case number for the victims through emails, through text messages, and also real-time dashboards. And this is something, what they've done is one journey. What they have set this API framework in place, and now they've started to realize that actually this doesn't just apply to victim support journey. Once you have these interfaces or connectors available, you can then go and open up other areas. So suddenly, they're now talking of how do we make our command and control center more efficient, because that's where the emergency calls are coming in and allocation happens. And then third biggest area which they want to look at is the officer mental well-being, which is a big problem at the moment with various police forces. And this is not just Humberside Police. There is Merseyside Police, there is Cumbria, there is Thames Valley Police. There are 43 police forces and about 10 in the Roku. And there are then constabularies and blue light services. So this is how they're now more confident that they can deliver these solutions much quicker, because once the framework is in place, then it is all about just building connectors one-off and reusing. Like we saw in case of HMLR, 62% reuse. That's the key thing here. Only took them 12 weeks to deliver. They said, last time we did anything in 12 weeks was to have 2 conversations about what we really want to do. So it's a change on, it's also a change of mindset.
We actually went live with this yesterday, so I encourage you guys to look out for press releases. So this was all just live yesterday, so fresh off the press in terms of that delivery date.
And it's first of the kind among the forces. Suddenly everyone is encouraged now. And not just the police forces, because we also know that, and we've been talking about, particularly in government, about interoperability, sharing data with other partner organizations, which is, can we do that? Security governance. So we're talking to an organization called Bounce Back or Divert, which enables police forces to actually avoid arrests if the crime is not serious, if there is teenagers misbehaving. But in return, they get referred to Divert, where they're allocated to social services and they do some volunteering work and they don't get into the system. So suddenly they're saying, actually, now we can securely share data. We are running this with Met Police. Can we also extend it into our area? And so is the other police forces talking about it. The next one.
Back is forward.
Back is forward.
Chesterfield. So what we tried to do, considering the intimacy of this event, is we tried to handpick some of our case studies that would be relevant to you. So we've worked with a number of councils within local authority, local government space. Both Chesterfield Borough Council and Guildford Borough Councils are some of our customers in the UK. So Chesterfield, as you know, based in, I'm going to try this and I feel like I'm in the right place for you to correct me, Derbyshire. Is that correct? Okay. So South Africans always struggle with those ones. Warwickshire, Derbyshire. Say again? Oh, goodness, I can't. So they have 105,000 residents in Chesterfield, and what they did is, in terms of their kind of vision, is, I guess, like a lot of councils and local authorities, and Guildford certainly had a similar vision, and that this was all about being able to allow their citizens to self-serve. So it's all about citizen and resident experience, and then equally about employee experience as well. So I remember when we were first discussing requirements with Guildford, one of their customer service agents said to us that it took her to deal with one customer inquiry. She needed to interact with 15 different systems. Can you just imagine that? To process one inquiry, having to interact with 15 different systems. And then we wonder, why is so difficult. So what Chesterfield did in starting their journey is they adopted Salesforce, so they use Service Cloud and Experience Cloud, and they launched a digital portal for their citizens to be able to self-serve. So that was the first phase of their program. Later on, what we did is we added MuleSoft, and we integrated Salesforce with NEC. And so we allowed them then, we built out some APIs and allowed them then to share data. And off the back of that, what they were able to do is to be able to launch a tenancy services to some of their residents. So from a paper process where you would only get information about your tenancy in a paper statement every 6 months, tenants were then able to basically interact in real time. Think of your internet banking kind of login portal. And that's what the interface looks like. And you're able to log in, you're able to in real time interact, you can review your transactions, your statements, all of that sort of thing. And that's just the start of their journey. And from here onwards, we're talking about integrating with asset management, and we're about to start a full roadmap. Andrea, did you want to add anything?
No, I was just going to say that it's just the beginning, right? So when because I actually saw them a couple of days ago, just coincidence. And I was saying to them, like, if you're feeding from the same data, same system, same APIs, just reuse them and just deliver on those services really, really quickly with a partner like you guys to make it happen. So it just makes sense just to, utilize Salesforce and keep adding stuff to help with all of the citizen services that you have and digitize as much as possible, because they said we don't have enough time, people, and money to do this, right? So you need to think about reusing what you have.
Absolutely.
So, beginning of the journey, which is
But that's a good point, because Guildford Borough Council is doing exactly the same. Chesterfield started with housing, Guildford started with waste management, and there are 200 services any council pretty much can provide or will provide. But what we've seen is that it's a shift in mindset of how IT projects or business projects are to be delivered. Because typically a project is taken as, okay, we need waste management. This is a waste management solution. We need a new solution. We need a CRM system, but our citizen data sits in that system. And then we're going to have to integrate these 3 systems. Let's do a custom code or a point-to-point integration. It's basically a horizontal. Everything is bundled into one sort of project. But I think the shift in mindset here is that where API-led architecture comes into play is that it affects everything. It can enhance everything. And you don't need to have the bigger vision from day one. You could start small and then expand, because that's how the architecture is actually set up to do. And that is what, once the businesses understand that, suddenly the speed of delivery is so fast. And it's actually enabling business to stop bothering IT too much, not giving away the core of IT function and the security and governance away to business, because then it can go a bit crazy, but enabling them to actually run with their projects. And that's what that shift makes such a big difference.
Exactly.
Can I add a bit? Because I think for me, this is one of the best definitions on this slide here of the answer to composability. Salesforce is like a jigsaw that helps us fit all the pieces together. That's what composability is, and that's what platform is. Of course, MuleSoft is part of that overall platform together with Salesforce and the cloud. Once you buy it, you can keep on using it for other things. So you only have to buy it once. You only have to pay for it once. Once you've paid for it, you can then leverage it to do all the other things. So whereas in the past, you might have had to go out and procure another system and another cost product and another piece of software, while still having to then go through ever more complex integration. When you go down the platform route, you reuse not just your APIs, you reuse your functions and the components of your data model, which is why it's all composable. And through that process, you yet start to retire all of your legacy systems bit by bit, which is paying down your technical debt. And that's the route to making significant reductions in your ongoing maintenance costs, enhancement costs, and all the other things that cost you money that actually take away from your capital budget because all your revenue is being spent on maintaining on all your own stuff. That's the reason you go down a platform route. That's the reason you want reusability. That's the reason you want composable architecture.
Absolutely.
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 I'm available for, what is it, birthdays, weddings, and bar mitzvahs, yeah?
At a small fee.
I said this is
Well,
this,
can you make that a bit bigger?
this is a composable presentation.
But if I can ask a question, maybe broadly what Craig's spoken about there. When you look at things like the metrics you brought out here, reductions in complaints and the paper-based stuff, but taking that composability message here and taking what happens in public sector. Public sector is driven by policy and policy changes. Is that within Chesterfield or Guildford or whatever? Are you seeing that they can respond more quickly to policy changes? I'm sorry, I'm meaning the witness.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there are 10 things less to do.
Right.
For a new service launch, right? So there is you speak to councils. I was speaking to Kingston when they're merging with Wandsworth Council now in London, and they also support a charity which is focused on childcare, right? There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of systems, and they're saying, okay, we do things this way, you do this way. How do we merge? And it's the answer to that is that one organization has an API-led architecture, and the other saying we can easily get absorbed into it. So it's much quicker to even merge, not just new service. Also, they discovered that at a government level, at a national level, there are actually 430, I believe, different services any council can provide, which can generate revenue for them. For example, Richmond Council discovered, in small print somewhere, that they can provide a bin cleaning service and they can add £1.50 to the council tax. And if you add that to 150,000 households, that is £200,000 of extra revenue for the council. And there are so many more services. But business as usual has to run. There's so much going on. Everyone is busy. And this is where these things, they free up time. Automation, we spoke about RP, and people see automation as, oh, this means loss of jobs. No. This means freeing up your time to be able to freely grow and innovate. That is, again, that's how it's difference in thinking. So if your people have free time, first they will not be doing boring repetitive tasks. The mood happiness level will be higher. They will be more productive. Plus they have free time. So you can actually use that time to grow into new markets, not in case of councils, but you could grow in terms of launching new services. And then technology enables you to do that. So.
And I guess it's enabling citizens to do, bluntly, some of that work. So Guildford Council, they now have the ability for you to, on Google Maps, you can pinpoint, any fly tipping. So you can go to the exact spot as a citizen. You can pinpoint, through the use of Salesforce, you can pinpoint, okay, fly tipping. I mean, how quickly are they then able to respond to that? Because they've enabled citizens to be able to do that. And to your point, Craig, we listened to the story about HMLR earlier, and Vikram's spoken about that journey and that shift in mindset, and being able to, look at a lighthouse project and then use that and then, go on a roadmap. And HMLR's overall vision is to, eventually they want to be able to integrate every one of their back-end applications via MuleSoft. And they're now in a position talking about releasing capital. So we've been on this journey with them for a number of years, and they're now in a position to finally, at the moment, we're looking at decommissioning old legacy systems, and finally being able to decommission these systems, 3 years down the line. This is what is enabling them to develop more and more integrations. This is why they have over 30 APIs.
And one of our main partners is Infomentum. Infomentum is a fantastic partner because they get it, right? It's not about loading things up with governance and everything. It's about understanding how to deliver quickly. I think that's the whole bit about the Salesforce and the Infomentum advantage, is being able to do things in less than 40% of the time with the X percentage which you gave, which I can't remember now, which is about the reuse. These are the things that contribute to the Salesforce advantage, and these are the things that make a really big difference to delivering the value. We do so many business value studies, BVS, And that's all about looking at what the benefits case is, where we help our public sector customers understand what both the monetary and the time benefits are. I've never seen anything that we've done actually reduce headcount or be used to try and reduce headcount. It's always about being able to redeploy into being able to do things better. Imagine where you've got, take the housing one, whether this happens or not, but in other customers what we see is that by getting other calls, more basic calls done through self-service or through a faster call time, it means that the agents have got more time to spend being more empathetic to the real problematic cases. And that's the bit that makes a big difference to your citizens and to your customers. And I think that's where I get really excited about it. I've been in public sector now for 30 years, and I made a choice a long time in my career not to work in financial services or whatever, because I don't particularly like it, but I do feel that we're doing really good work in public sector where citizen services are improving immeasurably. That's what I love about it.
Oh, LSE, that's mine. Let me see if I remember their stats. London School of Economics started in 1895. And since then, they have produced 16 Nobel Prize winners, 31 heads of states, prime ministers and presidents. Currently, there are 34 active MPs who are from LSEs, 40 plus House of Lords. They have 3,000 staff, and they educate 10,000 people from 140 different countries. All sounds great. But the number of systems, courses, how fast they need to renew their courses, how they need to manage resets, how they need to manage alumni to get more admissions, it's not easy. That's why they have 3,000 staff, and they're launching new courses. I myself, part-time, a visiting lecturer of a couple of universities in London. And I helped them, part of a team, design a new course, which is about entrepreneurship and innovation in the digital age. On an average, it takes universities 24 months to launch a new course. Now, any other graduation, anywhere in the world, pretty much, it is well-known fact that 40% of what you study in your graduation is out of date by the time you graduate. If it is taking 24 months to launch a new course, you are halfway there already, right? And we're talking of digital entrepreneurship and all. So they have identified, so they made a statement. They said something like, we don't want to integrate systems. We want to create a central integration service which will help us complete the incomplete data. I love that statement, because that's what this is about. This is not about just an IT project. This is about enabling the course coordinators, the module leaders, the teachers, the lecturers, the students, to actually self-serve, not just in terms of consuming services, but also creating innovative new services. 400 integrations they have identified. If they go the route of building these integrations one by one, using peer-to-peer integration or custom, it probably will take them 10 years, a decade. What they've done, Alicia mentioned about Lighthouse project, and that seems to be a trend on how do you embark on this journey. You identify 1 or 2 Lighthouse projects, you prove the ROI, you show the stakeholders and the rest of the business on how quick this is and how quickly the results can be shown, and then it automatically spreads and expands. And that's what LSE are up to.
Every turn, mental health. So we included this particularly because I noticed we've got a couple of colleagues from the NHS in the room. And so previously they were known as Mental Health Concern or Mental Health Concern Group. You may have heard of them. So they're actually a charity, not-for-profit charity, that work on behalf of the NHS. So they provide specialist services. And they provide, I think, up to 90% of mental health support up down in the north. And so they became a customer about 3 years ago, and working with them has been an amazing journey. And we're just at the point of really starting to expand that now. So when we started working with them, they had some existing APIs. The APIs had no proactive monitoring at all. They were not secure. There was no governance surrounding them. And all of that was causing incredible challenges. So, their patients or their patients would, be asked to fill in forms, for example, with very sensitive data, and they could never be notified if that API had fallen over or wasn't working, and they could potentially not be getting that data back, which is literally, in this case, this is costing lives. So it was incredibly important for them to invest in a very secure, scalable integration platform. Another one of their key challenges is that their line of business systems constantly change. And so we heard from Corrado earlier where he was talking about that agnostic platform and composable platform. And for them, they really needed this agnostic integration layer so that they could continue to change those line of business systems if they needed to, but they could keep that integration layer between everything. So next on their journey, so where we started was integrating their patient therapy platform, so Silver Cloud with Salesforce. They're also a Salesforce customer. And where we're going next is an incredible journey, which is really across 3 areas. So one is all around their patient access, which is incredibly important for them. So they work with a lot of young people. In fact, it's quite staggering. Last week, we were having a conversation with John, the head of IT, and he was saying that in recent years they've noticed a real increase in the amount of mental illness, particularly in the north when it comes to university students. And this is all an impact of COVID and also an impact of social media. There's an increasing number of body issues with that generation. And so what they are having to do is set up recovery colleges where they are almost assigning a kind of a caseworker and a case to each student by default, because that's how big these numbers are of mental illness. And then what they want to do is they want to really open up the channels of communication with their patients so patients can easily access them. So a student would be able to securely WhatsApp to say that they need help, and they would be able to have two-way communication and access between something as simple as WhatsApp to be able to reach out and interact with more patients. So chatbots, something that they use hugely. They get 90% of their case referrals through chatbots. So this is really them trying to proactively work with a whole generation that they are identifying that are their new patients. Other areas where they want to invest in is billing. To save costs. So they have 15 people in finance almost full time that are processing in something simple, invoicing payments and that whole invoicing process. So they're looking at automation to do that. We're looking at employee experience, so being able to improve that experience then via integration as well. And then lastly, integration with the NHS. And finally, their vision is very much to have a number of APIs that they could publish on a portal, and those could all be accessible to all of their partners. And another thing that John said last week, which I loved, is that he was saying for them, if you think about it, the service that they deliver, it's therapy, but it's so prescriptive for them. So they can't differentiate as an organization. They deliver that same service that has to be delivered that way. So for them as a differentiator, the way they differentiate is via user experience, and that is the only way that they can differentiate. So being able to work at speed via the use of MuleSoft and being able to make these services so accessible is the only way that they can differentiate in the market. And that was really kind of the key drivers behind this program of work.
Yeah, and I think by integrating with patient records and NHS, with confidence, and that's not easy to get from NHS. Even if you're a partner organization, to get access to patient records, it's sensitive data. Their clinicians and physicians they work with are spending less and less time doing the admin, right? Focusing on their work, which is looking after the patients. instead of logging into various NHS systems, their own systems, getting information, collating it all, writing on a piece of paper, creating their own notes. It's all when it connects. They're spending less and less time on that. And I think that what does it do? It helps them, enables them to help more people.